Dylan.
All right. Welcome back to the Wednesday Word Wide. I'm here with Mike again, and we are going to talk about our favorite exercises, like per body part.
Yes.
Kind of like a this or that style. If we have differing, I guess, favorites, then we'll kind of this or that and explain why we like. And obviously, there's no perfect exercise. There are some that are better than others in terms of like stimulus to fatigue ratio and based on like
Adaptations you're trying to accrue.
Adaptations you're trying to accrue, and then also just like different body types. Some things feel better based on like where your like torso angle and how your feet and grip position should be. So we'll chit chat about that.
Yeah, and I think this is an important discussion because it's nice to have in your deck of cards a handful of exercises that you enjoy that fit the context of your goals. They're able to repeat periodically throughout yearly macro cycles. It takes away some of the thinking in some capacity, but then also kind of knowing what works best for your body based again on the adaptations you're wishing to build upon the most.
Yeah. So you just want to start from like top down?
Let's do it.
All right. I think we'll agree on this one. Maybe as of late, maybe not, but based on just what I see you do with like your clients and whatnot. But traps.
Yes, traps. I was wondering if we were going to start with neck, traps, how specific we're going to get.
I don't think either of us really trains the neck, but
Yeah, so with traps, there's not a whole lot of variation.
it's kind of boring.
Yeah, that you can, and there's some differences. So I guess to get right to the point, I like barbell shrugs. Zach is a big proponent of doing shrugs, and he kind of showed me the way he performs them. I really enjoy it, where you get some flexion in the cervical spine at the bottom of the eccentric to accentuate the stretch in the traps, and then squeezing your shoulder blades to the back, up to the back of your ears. That allows you to take the trap through its largest range of motion possible. So I think when it comes to traps, based on there being a limited amount of exercises, I want to really keen on the technique there. Oftentimes people, they just shrug their shoulders really fast, or they start bobbing their head like a cuckoo clock, even worse.
Yeah.
But taking the traps, if you're doing a shrug variant of some sort, through the full range of motion, when you let the cervical spine flex, it allows the trap to lengthen more, and we notice lengthen biased movements under tension seem to be what elicit the most amount of muscular hypertrophy. But yeah, number one for me, probably barbell shrugs, dumbbell shrugs, and then number three would be any type of overhead shrug variant, especially for individuals that need to build their lower traps.
Okay.
By shrugging while in shoulder flexion, you get a lot of lower trap stimulus.
Yeah. So, what I found, believe it or not, my traps definitely have developed a little bit more in the last 2 years. But what I've noticed is that when I do them, it might be because I do them with that kind of spinal, like deflection to kind of elicit that kind of lengthened position. I notice that they don't necessarily grow like vertically like this.
Yeah.
It's more so like kind of adding that like depth to it, and I guess the depth of it. So there was somebody at the L2 this weekend that worked at a gym in Chicago, and I was sitting behind him, and from behind him, it literally looked like a pyramid to like the bottom of his like ears. And I asked him jokingly, I was like, "How did you get your traps like that? And he's like, "Dude, they've been like this since middle school."
Yeah.
And like they just like slowly kept growing proportionally to his body. So I don't know. Do you think that flexion shrug to the shrug is the reason why it may not grow vertically and more so just gain that kind of thickness to it?
I
Or
think
do you
the
think
way
it's
it
just
grows is going to probably be
genetic?
largely genetic.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably hard to alter. There is some research that shows, depending on the exercise you choose for a muscle group, you can bias specific regions of that muscle. So there is some regional hypertrophy, but I would say most of that would be the genetic component.
Cool. Yeah. Mine would be the same. I thought Mike was going to say the overhead shrug, but mine would be the same, the flexion, kind of the thoracic flexion to that shrug. And I would choose a barbell. I don't feel the same, I guess, stimulus with dumbbells for whichever reason.
Yeah, I think I just have a harder time with the dumbbells.
Yeah. Delts.
Yeah, so let's start with the side delts.
Okay.
You go first.
Side delts, either like supine, like lateral, like cable lateral raises. I don't feel the same kind of stimulus directly towards the delts with like dumbbells. I feel like I am using a lot of like forearm to kind of create that like stability, and I feel like the cables completely take that like stability in like holding on to the dumbbell for whatever reason. So like laying on your back or at an incline, and then cable raises.
Yeah. So overall, I would prefer lateral raise variants over upright rows, even though I still use upright rows as a change in stimulus when the lateral variants get stale. My favorite variation that I enjoy the most, probably leaning towards the cable machine, single arm cable lateral raises.
Big stretch.
So big benefit with the cables, you get a lot of tension when the side delts are in the lengthened position, where with dumbbells, you get most of the tension when the lateral delts, side delts, are in the shortened position. And then by leaning towards it, like Zach said, the stretch is even better. So when you're in that lengthened position, the side delts, they get better stimulus.
And then would you do something different to target like the front delt or the rear delt? Or like for me, I don't really try to target the front delt or the rear delt because I do so much pulling and bench press, I feel like. So that kind of does enough for me.
Yeah, so I've experimented over the course of many years in terms of incorporating front raises, lack thereof front raises. For the front delt, the anterior deltoid, I don't do any direct training. I've done mesocycles where I've done front raises, but like you said, based on all of the horizontal pressing I get, that seems to give me enough stimulus there, and I haven't noticed an added benefit otherwise. I do like training the rear delts directly outside of horizontal rows. Now, even though this exercise biases the shortened position, a dumbbell incline bench, chest supported raise or reverse fly, I have noticed a lot of growth off of those. And then I really like holding the cable, reaching as far as you can, reverse flies, money grabbers, as Dr. Mike Gitzertel would say in one of his videos. So those two I have noticed a benefit. I also find by strengthening that position, it's helped me to really maintain a very strong position when I'm doing my presses.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, and I really like the cable reverse fly. I just feel like it's more like mid trap for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
But based on the movement, it's definitely hitting the delts at least to some point.
Yeah.
To some degree. So.
No, that's a good point. So some of that stability could come from that area as well.
Yeah. Lats.
Yeah.
So, or do you just want to go back in general?
Yeah, let's go back in general.
Okay. Go for it.
So number one favorite back exercise of all time, super basic. For me, has to be the pull-up. It's the first exercise that I fell in love with when I was 12 years old. Even while I was in high school, I got a ton of newbie gains off of the pull-up. They're fun to progress. It's also a very low barrier of entry. You don't have to set up weights. You can get right to it. The amount of mechanical tension and stretch that I get from my lats, and then the amount of growth I've gotten. If you ever look at, too, this is purely anecdotal, anyone that can do a lot of pull-ups, guarantee they have an incredible back. So pull-ups number one. What's your number one?
I find that I get a better kind of stimulus with some sort of lat pull-down variation, but the more I do pull-ups, in terms of the more I put them in a mesocycle or the frequency throughout the week, the better the movement gets. But if I don't do them for a certain amount of time, 2, 3, 4, whatever, 6 months, they feel horrible to start.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying really hard. I feel like I'm using a lot more of like forearm and kind of bicep to get myself up. But as I introduce them into the program and do them more, and the frequency goes up, this aspect of it as in a skill improves as well as like getting stronger at them. So some sort of pull down for me, not too wide, not too narrow, somewhere in between.
Yep. Yeah, so for normal pronated pull downs, I personally don't like them.
Yeah.
I find like my body restricts me. I have a hard time getting a good mind muscle connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not a comfortable movement.
Yeah.
I really do enjoy half kneeling, single arm cable pull downs, or single arm cable pull downs where I can create leverage with my legs underneath the pad.
Cool.
And then I really enjoy, especially currently, slightly supinated, narrower grip pull down. I find that my muscle connection is incredible in those. I get lit up.
Yeah.
How about horizontal rowing variants?
Superwoman row.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we termed that. You set up the bench at an angle,
Yeah.
and then you pull. I really like chest supported. So sitting on a bench, I have leverage. Chest is against the bench.
Yeah.
Neutral grip cable rows.
Yeah. Very similar movement. I probably do the Superwoman row a little bit different than how Mike would.
Yeah, I do it more as a vertical pull.
Yeah, you're definitely more or less of an incline. I definitely do like somewhere in between, like kind of closer to like 45 degrees. So it's like kind of like a hybrid between a vertical and a horizontal. But I do like the chest supported cable row because you can kind of get that. And if you get high enough on the bench, where the top of the pad is like here, you can almost like form your body around the bench and like kind of add that extra length to the lats and to the back and kind of get that stretch and then that kind of proud chest and then elicit that kind of that peak like contraction with it.
Yeah, for my number 3, I'd probably go for the next best horizontal row for me. I really like a supinated grip easy bar row.
Yeah, you do those a lot.
I really enjoy those. I think they're popularized by Dorian Yates back in the day.
Yeah.
But I like doing them like that. What's your least favorite back exercises?
Single arm dumbbell row.
I'm gonna take you one step further. Single arm renegade rows. So renegade rows in general.
Yeah.
It's when you're in a plank position and you individually pull each dumbbell. There's no stretch, then there's no stability.
Yeah. Yeah, that you did one up me there. Yeah, I mean, I just don't see any of the best bodybuilders out there doing them. So,
yeah, or like best athletes in general.
Yeah. But to each their own, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not that renegade row is like a bad exercise. It's just like there's smarter choices to kind of elicit back growth.
Yep.
All right. Let's go chest. All right. Cambered bar bench press. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Next.
It's just making a bench press better because it's a greater stretch, so less load is required.
Yeah.
And again, the length and position seems to elicit the most growth. So if you're able to train with less load, we'll all get a better stretch. Yeah, it's just going to be probably slightly superior.
Safer. I mean, you can load it more than like dumbbells, and dumbbells aren't. I would say dumbbells are. And it's funny because a lot of people go to dumbbells because they think it's safer than barbell benching, which doesn't make any sense because the stability is a bit of a challenge with dumbbells.
I think there's more ego with the barbell bench, and that gets people into issues. And then it's also with the dumbbells, you have to get them into position, which limits people.
Yeah.
Whereas the barbell, you don't.
Yeah, and so cambered bar bench, if anybody doesn't know what it is, it's basically a barbell that's like this, and then it like comes up like this, down, and it's flat. So it creates this like deficit bench press to a certain degree, and I would say it's a more of a stretch than you would get with dumbbells, even if you came out really wide with the dumbbells.
Yeah.
But you're allowed. You can then use more load, and it's safer than dumbbells, and the stretch is just unbelievable. Like the first time doing it, I actually like was a little nervous, and then slowly built up and added some weight to it and now it feels good.
Yep.
And it's like a newbie game because it's something that nobody really uses unless you're at like a specialty gym to some degree.
Sure.
Because it's just a weird barbell. It's not like you can only do a couple things with it, I feel like. And I think when people do it, they just like their chest just grows rapidly.
Yeah, it's nice. I do like dumbbell incline press a lot. Dumbbell presses are fine.
Yeah.
I just probably gravitate more if I'm like looking at the first exercise in a chest day. It's probably some type of barbell bench variant,
Yes.
whether it be incline or flat, cambered or straight bar.
Yeah.
What would you say least favorite pec exercise?
Dumbbell flies.
Dumbbell flies.
Yeah.
I would say dumbbell flies unless you do like a length and partial variant.
Yeah.
I do like those a lot.
I just feel like I'm being like I feel like my hand has a rope here. Somebody's pulling me this way and somebody's pulling me this way, and it's like I'm getting this huge stretch, but then it just automatically like a light bulb just turns off as soon as I get to a certain part.
Yeah.
So that's why if I'm gonna do flies, it's gonna be cable.
Yep.
But
So for me, I would say my least favorite pec exercise is probably when you take the dumbbells, you go into a neutral grip, and you hold them together with your palms together.
like a plate squeeze.
Yeah, like a plate
Yeah.
squeeze. I just think it's fine, but
Better
I
choices.
don't get any type of stretch in my pecs, and it kind of doesn't carry over well to any of my other presses.
Yeah, that would be an exercise where like the pump, like you'll get a pump from it, because you're like trying to squeeze.
Yeah.
And like usually people will do upwards 20, 30, maybe 40 reps with like a 10 to 25 pound plate of some sort, or
Yeah.
even like dumbbells, and like you're gonna get a big pump from it just because of the amount of volume, but it's like one of those things where like the pump doesn't really do anything for you because there's no stretch.
There's no stretch.
Yeah.
Correct. And there's probably easier ways to get pumps elsewhere.
Yeah. It's yeah. Makes sense.
As well. Let's go abdominals.
I just like a traditional like cable crunch.
Yeah.
I do a lot of GHD sit-ups, and now they're turning into like more of like a hip flexor quad, and even like a low back from like a stability standpoint. But the cable kind of you hold the cable in some fashion, and then you just
It's essentially a weighted cat-cow.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. One thing I like on those to really accentuate the stretch is push your stomach out as you get to the end of the eccentric.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just feel a horrible stretch in the abs.
Yeah. It horrible as in good.
Yeah.
What
So
about
those, yeah, I would probably go cable sit-ups, as long as you can create leverage for your feet, where you hold the cable behind you and you're maybe on a decline. So essentially a decline sit-up
you? Yeah.
of some variant, whether it's free weights or with a cable. Kneeling cable crunch. I do like GHD sit-ups and leg raises. GHD sit-ups, you get a fair amount of rectus femoris stimulus. So like Zach said, sometimes the hip flexors, lower back. Also, it's hard to gauge RIR well on those sometimes, especially if you feel like you're a movie star, you're Rocky Balboa,
Yeah.
Jack Lee or Jet Li.
Yeah.
So that sometimes can be difficult, but if you take it full range of motion, slow eccentric, being very introspective while you do it, I do really enjoy those movements.
Yeah.
What would you say your least favorite abdominal exercises are?
Any sort of like laying down and like scissor or like flutters.
Yeah, so I think those are a nice movement to get some volume in, but I do like the loaded variants more for
Yeah.
general hypertrophy. I'm gonna say my least favorite, and maybe this is a cop-out, but boot camp style ab exercises.
Like
Workouts.
mountain climbers.
Yeah, like mountain climbers would be a prime example, where you're just kind of going for time, but there's no RIR designation. So whenever people use a format that treats abs like cardio and not like any other muscle.
Yeah.
But there is something to be gained there. Can you get at that skill? It's fun. It is a way to get a fair amount of volume in quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It is what it is.
yep.
Arms, like
Yeah,
biceps.
let's go biceps.
I like any sort of curl where like there's like some sort of either like a stable surface and you're like where your shoulder kind of flexion and extension isn't like the limiting factor, or what I mean by is like you don't use shoulder flexion and extension to curl it up.
Mhm.
So like a preacher curl, I've done one with the cables where I've kind of like used my knees as like that stability, and you use like a cable kind of preacher curl. It's just easier with setup than like dragging a bench over or moving the like the GHD we'll use for like preacher curls. So some sort of preacher, I think, is...
Yeah, so you like biasing tension in the length and position.
Yeah.
There's a cool study that came out recently comparing incline dumbbell bicep curls to preacher curls. This is where regional hypertrophy takes effect. The preacher curls elicited more growth in the distal portion of the bicep as well as the flexors and the forearm, whereas the incline dumbbell bicep curl elicited a little bit more growth directly within the bicep brachii. For me, like Zach said, I typically enjoy lengthened, biased curl variants where the tension's high there. I really like, we call it the Naruto curl.
Yes.
It's where you're on an incline bench facing away from two individual cable handles. Your elbows are up high, and then the cable pulls you back, and you're just bending the elbow.
Yeah.
The amount of tension I get there is great. It's easy to kind of know when you're close to failure. You're in a stable position where it disallows you from using extra body English to do it. So it's pretty dummy proof, which is nice.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like similar to the Bayesian curl where your elbow's back. I just find it biases maybe the length of position just slightly more. So both those are great. I do from time to time like biasing tension in the shortened position, specifically if I start to notice local fatigue near the elbow joint. And typically, if that starts to accrue, then I'll do a mesocycle or two, biasing the short end, so like a dumbbell incline chest supported supinated curl would be a prime example there. And of course, I do like classic easy bar curls as well. They do a pretty decent job of biasing the long head of the bicep, which allows you to showcase a nice peak. What would you say your least favorite bicep variant is?
Reverse.
Reverse curls?
Yeah. It's just all forearm.
Yeah, we have another cop-out answer. Probably band curls.
Yeah.
Just because you can't really...
It's hard to measure.
It's hard to measure. The band can get more loose over time. You can really only progress reps, or if you know the band tensions that you have. Depending on how you stand on the band, that's going to affect the tension. So it's not as dummy proof, it's not as easy to increase mechanical tension with time, and it's not length and biased.
That was what I was gonna add. It's like the hardest part of the rep is at the top.
Yeah, which is fine from time to time, but there's other movements that I would do that with before the band.
Yeah.
Triceps.
I'm a big JM press guy. I think
nice.
I think it feels better on the elbows than like a skull crusher, and you can use a little bit more load because it's kind of like that hybrid between a close grip and a skull crusher. I find that I get a pretty good pump from it, but it does affect like bench pressing. For me. So so I guess then that wouldn't be the best, but I'll just go with that.
If you use it as like a secondary movement within the same day. I'd probably go overhead, cable, tricep extensions.
Okay.
Yeah, incredible stretch.
What do you use? A rope, a bar, two handles? Like, what do you use?
Yeah, either two handles or a single straight bar or an easy bar. I've used the triangle grip for variation from time to time. It's okay. But it wouldn't be like my preferred. My least favorite's the rope. Least favorite's the rope by far.
Yeah.
Those, and then I really like setting up an incline bench in front of a cable machine, putting the cable set pretty high, and just doing a tricep push down where I'm locking my elbows to my sides, keeping them in during the entire duration of the movement. I find those feel pretty amazing. What would you say your least favorite is?
For triceps?
Yeah.
Like dumbbell skull crushers. I don't feel anything.
So I like dumbbell skull crushers.
Yeah.
Keeping the reps higher.
Okay.
Because I feel like I can get a decent stretch on them.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, joint fatigue becomes an issue for skull crusher variants, even at light loads, rather quickly. They can get stale fast. For me, least favorite tricep exercise, probably gonna go. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Go through my head.
Close grip bench press.
Yeah, because so the problem with like the presses in general for triceps is they only bias the medial and lateral head of the tricep, but you don't really get any long head stimulus from them.
Okay.
So that's where presses kind of fail the triceps.
Okay.
If the long head makes up the majority of the arm, and your major tricep movement isn't hitting what majority of the arm is, probably better overall options. So I guess counting presses as tricep work in general would be my least favorite. But if you're using the press as a pec stimulus, like a close grip bench, gives you a ton of upper chest stimulus, then yeah. So it depends on what you're using the tool for.
Okay. Glutes.
Oh, front foot elevated split squats
Yeah.
on a Smith machine.
Yeah, we'll agree on that.
Yeah, tons of stretch, tons of stability. The opposing hip flexor isn't the limiting factor like it can be on Bulgarian split squats when you set up the bench too high.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily getting a ton of stretch in the front leg, which is the locus of focus, but you just perceive something in the back that then is fatigue going into when you're actually training the muscle.
I agree. I think when people set up like a Bulgarian or a front foot elevated and anything where it's like a single leg like split squat style, people need to set the bench or whatever behind them where their back foot is kind of stabilizing on lower than they think.
Yeah, and then if you have the back foot stabilized, keep your shoelaces down so it makes it harder to plant into the back leg so you can keep the tension in the front leg, requiring less load to get the stimulus.
Yeah.
Least favorite?
Least favorite? Probably hip thrusts, just because it takes forever to like get enough plates, and it's like a second deadlift day.
Yeah.
It takes forever to kind of set up. Usually people are very strong with it, so the time it takes to load the bar, unload the bar, and then also like just getting in the ready position is kind of annoying.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you're using it to like teach hip extension, it can be a decent tool. But just the amount of time it takes, and then one-to-one when compared to normal barbell squats, some studies show it equal, most studies show it inferior for listing hypertrophy. And then the benefit of the barbell squat is the amount of quadricep stimulus you get as well.
Yeah.
And if the loading time takes about the same, I'd probably opt for the barbell squat for glute hypertrophy.
Yeah.
So that one could be subbed out. For me, it would probably be banded kickbacks.
Banded? What about cable?
Cable kickbacks? Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those either because the stretch isn't
Just the kickback
generally
in general.
great. If you can rig the cable, I've seen it done, where you set up an incline bench and then you have the one non-working leg on it, and then you let the cable pull your glute into a stretch position and going back. So if someone's thinking that, they're probably doing good things for their glutes because that takes a little bit of innovation, or following the right people. But generally the way people do them, I'm not a fan. And I think oftentimes people, they just do it until they feel like a slight pump, and they don't actually, it's one of those movements that's really hard to push close to failure.
Yeah. I did the kickback machine at Planet Fitness once just because I've never done it before, and I just felt it was like all quad.
Yeah.
It was like weird. It wasn't even like a glute.
The glutinator? Or?
I don't know what it was called, but it was like one of those like
I'm okay with
like
glutinator.
Life Fitness. It wasn't. It was like a.
If it's Life Fitness, I don't want it.
Yeah. It was like a hotel.
Yeah,
gym.
Life Fitness and Techno, no.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Hamstrings.
Yeah. So, favorite exercise for the hamstrings. This is a tough one. So I'll go hinge variant first, and then I'll just go where you bend the knee second, because it's hard to compare those two. So for hamstrings, I'd probably go some type of, if you have a lot of flexibility and mobility, I would go deficit barbell RDLs. Where you take
Like a stiff leg?
Yeah,
or
stiff leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of view them.
They're the same.
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
The key with it is just taking the weight to the ground on every single rep. So none of like the half rep type stuff, because there's no stretch in the hamstrings. I really also like the squat safety bar Good Mornings.
Yeah.
For those, I like it because the way that contraption's rigged, you get a ton of stimulus in your lower trap. It's easy and intuitive to fight for thoracic extension there. Thinking about thoracic extension as you go into the hinge allows you to elicit a greater stretch in the hamstrings.
Cool.
So, yeah, those two pretty much interchangeable for me. Probably more mesos on RDLs, just because there's more variants that you can do on RDLs, but overall, comparable.
Yeah.
You?
My favorite would either be like RDLs. I really like Nordics
Mm-hmm.
on the GHC, and I prefer like lying hamstring curl. machine.
Ooh.
For me, I get a lot of knee pain, not pain, but just like I feel like a lot of like the load on seated hamstring curls isn't in the hamstring, it's in like the knee joint, like lateral and like medial. So it could be setup. My setup could be wrong, but I've just never found them to be. And I don't like where do you think the pad should be for the seated hamstring curl?
I usually go right above the knees.
Right above the knees, yeah. So it's just a lot of tension on my knees for some reason. So maybe my setup is just wrong, or I need to play around with it. But I would say just when in doubt, RDLs.
Yeah, for me, with the bending of the knee variants, I do like the GHC Nordic, mostly because there's a cool study that came out recently comparing GHC Nordics to seated hamstring curls, and what they found was they work different regions of the hamstring differently. The one plus that the GHC Nordic got was building the sartorius. That's known as the honeymoon muscle, allows you to get femur external rotation with hip extension, longest muscle in the body. So I like the stimulus I get there. I think Nordics are just a lot of fun as well. So
it's like a productive party trick.
It is so that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So GHC Nordics, I'd probably go sitting hamstring curl as my number one.
Yeah.
With an emphasis on leaning as far forward as possible to get the best stretch possible in the hamstrings.
Yeah.
I do like the prone, but I haven't used it in enough mesocycles. To be honest, I just haven't had access to one.
Yeah.
Based on the literature I've seen comparing prone to seated did better in those short-term studies, but again, they're only so short-term. Based on the biomechanics behind it, you probably get a little bit more tension in the length of position.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're both good.
Yeah. Cool. Least favorite.
Least favorite hamstring exercise? Probably when people make the mistake of calling squats a hamstring exercise where there's no hamstrings involved.
Like
I'd probably say deadlifts
yeah.
is my least favorite hamstring exercise.
Yeah.
Just because there's no stretch and there's a ton of axial fatigue and systemic fatigue that I get from deadlifts. Deadlifts are a really cool feat of strength. They apply well for most people in the everyday world trying to pick something up heavy off the ground. I think that's a very valuable skill. But for just hypertrophy's sake, there's probably better options that do less damage.
Yeah, you're not saying that it's not working the hamstrings. It's just like what you get out of it is very sore, very tired, and the deadlift will kind of train other body parts, I guess, better than than just directly the hamstring. There's no direct hamstring work with it, and it just produces a lot of fatigue.
Correct.
Yeah.
I do think deadlift's a decent trap exercise though, because
Yes.
it pulls you into a very lengthened state.
Yeah.
You've never seen someone that deadlifts a lot with small traps, even if they do zero direct trap workout
Yeah,
outside of that.
yeah. My least favorite. I don't like that like standing.
Oh yeah, I used one of those in California a week ago.
I just think I'm not a big fan of like single leg, like besides Bulgarians and like lunges of some sort. I don't like single leg, like leg extensions. It takes too much time for my liking, or I guess enjoyment of training. And then like single leg, like hamstring curls.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I get into this, and I think other people do it too, where they're like, I have to match like the amount of reps per side, And
Oh,
like,
sure.
And like if I'm like 15 reps and 3 RIR on the right side, but then I'm like dying at 12 reps and like struggling to get that 13th rep, then it's just kind of a mess.
That's fair.
But then I could be just caring about the wrong things.
Personally, I don't really care about matching.
Yeah.
I just kind of take.
I'm saying most people.
Most people
like
do care.
Their OCD will.
Yeah, it just kicks in. Yeah, for me, like, yeah, that's I guess what I got.
Yeah.
That's a fair take.
Yeah. Cool. Quads.
Quadriceps. Oh yeah, I gotta go the leg press. No axial fatigue, can get an incredible stretch at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I very rarely ever get joint fatigue on it. It's extremely loadable. The pump that I get is great.
Yeah.
So it checks all the boxes for what I would say is a great exercise for eliciting hypertrophy.
Yeah. I would say leg press, but if we're doing something like that, I use the pendulum squat like 2-3 times, and it was like the greatest pump to like like it was weird. Like I had a pump, but I was able to like keep my sets like relatively similar every single time in terms of like reps. But since like not a lot of people have access to a pendulum squat, I would say leg press. But I would do more of like a narrow kind of cannonball style stance.
Zach's got incredible mobility,
so
he's able to get full ROM on the machine even with the narrow stance like that.
Yeah, and like for some reason, like when I squatting or leg press and I have like wide stance, I feel like you guys are doing that now. Like a wide stance.
Always wide.
It doesn't feel too good on the hips for me.
So I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
Which is kind of neat.
Like it probably elicits a stretch for you.
Yeah, the key on the leg press is don't put your feet too high.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to get less of a stretch in the quadriceps. So you almost want to lead with the knees, open up those femurs, pressing through your big toe, controlling in the amortization phase or the in-between from when you're lowered at the bottom to going up.
Yeah. I mean, even just like doing this, I feel it like deep in the hip socket, so like that's why I tend to have like a more narrow stance too with squatting.
Yeah. Let's see.
Least favorite.
Yeah, least favorite. I also want to add leg extensions in there as one of my favorites, just because nothing else really hits the rectus femoris that well.
It's like a preacher girl.
Rectus femoris, middle muscle within the quadricep. Helps to stabilize the patellofemoral joint. It gives the density look in the quads.
Yeah.
Let's see, least favorite quad exercise. I'm probably going to go now. I know a lot of people in the scientific community love these because of the stretch they get in the quads.
Yeah.
I just don't enjoy them at all. So this is probably a me problem. I don't like sissy squats.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think they're ridiculous.
Sissy squats are when your heels are raised the whole time. You're squatting down, trying to get your knees to touch the ground in front of you.
Yeah. It's like a Michael Jackson like squat.
Yeah, so I view the sissy squat like a skull crusher. You either love them or you hate them.
Yeah.
Some people get more joint fatigue more quickly. Some people just don't like it.
Yeah.
That would be the parallel there.
Yeah. I agree.
What about you?
I mean, I would say that.
Sissies?
Like, yeah. Sissies or even like... I mean, I don't want to... I mean, if I say like squat, it would have to be like SSB bar squat, so the safety squat bar, and that's because it just destroys like my thoracic, like the low trap like spinal like erectors. So like in the few times that I've done it back like squats with a safety squat bar, it's like my upper back fatigues out before anything. So
I guess bring it to that then too. Reverse band squats, if we're talking squats, because that takes away the tension at the bottom when the quads are in the most stretched position.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Alrighty.
Calves, last one.
So I have experienced some calf growth in the last couple of years. I didn't think it was possible.
Yeah.
And I think it was mostly me being lazy.
Yeah.
It's super simple, but I go to the ledge of the leg press, or any type of ledge for that matter. I have something that I can kind of hold on to for balance. And I love doing calf raises standing, where I just take my heels all the way to the ground, I pause for a second in the bottom, and then I go up. I don't really accentuate the squeeze that much at the top, but a slight squeeze, and then just down slow through that eccentric, pause at the bottom in the stretch position, and I just repeat that until pretty much failure with the same technique. I don't like seated calf raises. They don't elicit much growth at all in the gastrocnemius. They're just an inferior way to do it.
You're kind of limited with your choices with calves, so definitely standing calf raises, and I think that people like use that kind of excuse that like calves are genetic, which it doesn't make any sense because they're just like any other muscle, and I think just people are just like super lazy with the training, and they don't trust the amount of time that it needs to take it, and they kind of give up after a couple weeks, and I think it becomes like a pump session. It's kind of like when people start to do like lateral raises, and so like not so much focusing on like the pointing the toes, but like the stretch and kind of getting that heel to touch the ground. I think more people would benefit from it.
Yeah, just focus on length.
Yeah,
the weird like bob that you do, you're in the deep end in the pool, you're trying to stand up and not drown.
Yeah, right.
That's not going to grow your calves, that way of doing calf raises.
Least favorite?
Oh, also with calves, doing them at the end when you're tired. I think if you actually want to grow them, do them first. Because they're not the most glorious, so if you're already like not feeling the gym anymore because you're tired by the end, I think that's why calf training gets a bad rap.
You said seated, right?
Yeah, I'd probably say seated or anything where you're just short in position.
Yeah. I'm gonna get real. Any like jump rope or like agility ladders?
Yeah, if you're using that for your calves, that's tough. That's like going to McDonald's expecting sushi.
Yeah.
You might get a couple ingredients that are in sushi.
My calves get destroyed whenever we do double unders for CrossFit, but like that doesn't mean that they're gonna grow.
No.
And I've been doing double unders for 6-7 years now, and they're the same size.
Most underrated exercise is being a dad. No, I'm not a dad, but every dad you see, they always have gigantic calves.
Yeah.
And I've had dads tell me that once they had their children, their calves grew.
That's funny.
Maybe they gained weight and
they need the stereotypical dad white Nikes too.
Yeah. If you have Nike or Monarchs, you mow your own lawn, you grill on weekends, and you have children. Right there, those are four things that are automatically correlated to massive calves.
Yeah, nobody cares about the dad strength. It's just the dad calves.
The dad calves.
All right. Anything like takeaways that you would? Obviously, we gave our personal preferences and the ones that we like. We don't like. What would be like a takeaway for people?
Takeaway would be think about the exercises that you're able to progress well. Think about the exercises that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Think about the exercises that elicit a nice pump but not a lot of joint fatigue when doing them repetitively. Think about the exercises that allow you to get a great stretch.
Yeah.
Those are probably your money exercises. We didn't list any groundbreaking exercises. These are all basic movements. Directed adaptation is one of the major principles for building muscle, aka doing things repeatedly over time. And if you can choose exercises that check all those boxes I just listed repeatedly over time, you're probably going to grow.
Well said.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.